students, I'm back with your next class. In today's class, we are going to discuss another very important part of the mineral nutrition chapter, that is classification of essential elements. Alright, so see, in the last class you have learned about how out of the 60 elements which were found inside the plant body, only 17 could qualify or could fulfill the essentiality criteria. Hence, those 17 elements are termed as essential elements, right? Now, we can classify those 17 essential elements based on certain parameters. So, let's see what are the parameters in which we can classify them. First, based on quantitative requirement. That means in how much quantity will the plant require the elements for their overall growth and development. Now, based on quantitative requirement, the elements can be divided into two categories, that is macronutrients and micronutrients, also called trace elements. Alright, so see, macronutrients, these are elements which will be required in more than 10 millimole per kg of dry matter. Okay, when an element will be required in more than 10 millimolar per kg of dry matter, that would be termed as macronutrients. Means it would be required in more quantity. Alright. So which are those macronutrients? They are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus, sulfur and calcium. Alright. So 9 of them together makes up the macronutrients. Alright. Now, micronutrients or trace elements. Micronutrients or trace elements are those which will be required in less than 10 millimole per kg of dry weight. Okay, so they will be required in more than 10 millimole per kg of dry matter, and this will be required less. Alright, that's the difference. Fine. So, micronutrients are also called trace elements because they are very much they are required in very little quantity to the plant. And if you asked me that what would happen if we provide micronutrients in excessive concentration to the plants, you would find that micronutrients, whenever found in excess concentration in the surrounding of the plant, that would not do any benefit. Rather, that would cause toxicity in the plant body. Alright, so that's why micronutrients concentration has to be very much specific. Okay, so which are the micronutrients? There are 8 micronutrients. They are iron, manganese, zinc, copper, boron, molybdenum, nickel and chlorine. Alright, 9 out of the 17, 9 are macro and 8 would be micro. Is that clear? Now, do remember another important thing here, that certain of the elements, they are called beneficial elements. They are not essential elements. They are not going to fulfill all the essentiality criteria. But if they are present in the surrounding of the plant, or if they are provided to the plant, that would be that would be added advantage for the overall growth and development of the plant. Hence, we call them beneficial elements. Okay, so beneficial elements are sodium, silicon, selenium and cobalt. Alright. Now, do remember another important thing, that all the out of the 17 essential elements, in the macronutrients we have carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, isn't it? These three, they are not obtained by the plant from soil. Okay, carbon is obtained from carbon dioxide, hydrogen from water and oxygen from both carbon dioxide and water. So because these three elements are obtained by the plant from sources other than soil, we call them non-mineral elements. Whereas rest all of these elements, okay, irrespective of being macro or micro, all other elements, okay, which are obtained from soil, they are known as mineral elements. Alright, understood this much? Now, next category is based on function. Now, based on function, essential role that the elements would play in the plant body, we can again categorize them into 4 divisions. 4 categories can be formed. First is as structural component. So, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen, these 4 are the structural components, because after all, Carbon, hydrogen and oxygen forms the protoplasm. 94% of the total dry matter of the plant body is made up of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. On the other hand, nitrogen, it's going to be forming the essential component of nucleic acid, vitamins, hormones, proteins, etc. Alright. Now, as components of energy related chemicals, see, magnesium, it is a component of chlorophyll. If you remember the last class, I have told you that magnesium is a very integral part of the chlorophyll. The chlorophyll's core, the structure of chlorophyll, if you study, the core of the chlorophyll consists of magnesium. And that's how magnesium becomes a very important energy related chemical, because magnesium is going to finally be associated with entrapping sunlight during photosynthesis. Alright. Now, phosphorus. Okay. Phosphorus is a component of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Right. Adenosine triphosphate is the energy currency of the cell after all. Because it is the energy currency of the cell, hence all metabolic reactions are dependent on it. And hence phosphorus is a very, very important component for energy rich chemicals present in the cell of the plant body. Okay. Now, as activators and inhibitors of enzymes, various metabolic reactions when occurs in the plant body, all the steps of the metabolic processes will be dependent on some or the other enzymes. So certain mineral elements, they are absolutely required for making those catalysts or making those enzymes functional. Okay. So few of the important enzymes have been mentioned here, like Mg2+, it is required for activating two enzymes called rubisco and peptase. Okay. Ribulose bisphosphate carboxylase oxygenase and phosphoenol pyruvate carboxylase. These two enzymes are very much essential during the dark reaction of photosynthesis. In the chapter of photosynthesis, you will learn about them in details. Alright. Next, Zn2+. Now, Zn2+, zinc, is going to activate alcohol dehydrogenase enzyme, which will be very much required for alcohol fermentation process. Next, molybdenum. Molybdenum activates nitrogenase enzyme or nitrate reductase, and these are the enzymes associated with nitrogen metabolism, which we will learn in the last part of this chapter itself. Finally, for maintenance of osmotic potential of the cell, certain of the elements are required to maintain ionic balance or buffer activity of the cell or stomatal opening and closing. Mostly for this purpose, we have potassium and chlorine. Potassium and chlorine helps in the buffer activity. Likewise, you already know from the transport chapter that K plus potassium, it will help in stomatal opening and closing as well. Right? Potassium pump theory, if you remember. So these are the basic, different 4 categories based on which the elements have been categorized as per their functions. Now we will discuss about the roles of macro and micronutrients. Alright. Now regarding all of these elements which are mineral elements, mainly those elements which are obtained from the soil, those elements, they are mostly going to be absorbed by the plant roots in the ionic form, right? In the transport chapter itself, I have told you, most of the mineral elements will be present in the soil in the ionic state. That's why they cannot be passively taken up by the root here, rather has to be actively taken up, right? So let us mainly discuss here about the role of mineral elements, and mostly you need to remember that in which ionic form or in which ionic state these minerals are going to be absorbed by the plant roots. Alright. So nitrogen. Nitrogen is absorbed as NO3 minus, NO2 minus and NH4 plus. And it is required in most parts of the plant body, especially in the meristem, that means where cell division is continuously going on, and is a major constituent of nucleic acid, vitamins, hormones and proteins. Alright, so important roles you have to remember. Likewise, in which ionic form the element is absorbed, that is also very important. Alright, now phosphorus. Phosphorus is absorbed as H2PO4 minus or HPO4 minus. It is stored in the developing fruits, seeds, etc. Likewise, it is an important component of the cell membrane. ATP after all, phosphorus, so ATP, nucleic acid, NADP, etc. Next, potassium. Potassium is absorbed as K+. It is found in the meristem's buds, etc. And mainly do remember, all of the minerals, where are they taken up by the xylem? They are taken up in the growing points of the plant body, isn't it? So mostly all the minerals will be found in the plant body where meristematic activity is going on or else some type of growth is going on. Okay, that would remain common for all elements. Alright. Now, potassium, it maintains ionic balance. It will be helping in protein synthesis. It will also help in stomatal movement, that is stomatal opening and closing. Alright. Next, calcium. Calcium is absorbed as Ca2+. It is required in the meristems again. See, it's been common from all of that. So meristems and accumulates in the older leaves. Because calcium being a immobile element, it is not remobilized from older to new parts. That's why it will accumulate in the older leaves. Now, required for the synthesis of cell walls, especially as calcium pectate in the middle lamella. As you know, middle lamella, that is a kind of cementing layer that will be found in between two adjacent plant cells, and this middle lamella will be formed during cytokinesis itself. So middle lamella is made up of calcium and magnesium pectate. So that's how calcium is related to middle lamella. Okay. Now, it stabilizes the cell membrane, activates certain enzymes like ATPase, alpha amylase, etc. Alright. Next, magnesium. Magnesium is absorbed in only one ionic form, that is Mg2+. It is required in growing areas of the roots and stems. It is going to, now what is the function of magnesium? It forms magnesium pectate in middle lamella and the structure of chlorophyll. That I have already told you. Magnesium forms the core of the chlorophyll structure. Also, it is going to be a part of middle lamella as magnesium pectate. It helps in the binding of ribosomal subunits and the synthesis of DNA and RNA. Alright. Next, sulfur. Sulfur is absorbed as SO4 minus and it is required in the young leaves and the meristems again. So, it is the constituent of amino acids like methionine and cysteine and vitamins like thiamine and biotin. Also, it is going to be forming certain kind of components very essential for respiration, that's called coenzyme A and ferredoxin. What is coenzyme A? What would be ferredoxin? What are their roles? You will be finding in details in the respiration chapter. Alright. Now, iron. Iron is absorbed as Fe3+ and it is required everywhere in the plant body. Alright. Now, it is required in redox reactions in ETC, that is again respiration, and it activates catalase enzyme and the formation of chlorophyll. Fine. Next, manganese. Manganese is absorbed as Mn2+ and it is required mostly in the seeds and the leaves. It activates various enzymes and the most important role for manganese would be photolysis of water. See, during photosynthesis, when photosynthesis occurs in the green plants, you know, oxygen evolves out, isn't it? Oxygen is released, right? So from where is this oxygen getting released? It is getting released by splitting of a water molecule. When water molecule will split, oxygen as a byproduct will be released. And during that, or this step of splitting of water is also called photolysis of water. It's a very important step and requires manganese. Alright. Next, zinc. Zinc is absorbed as Zn2+ and it is required everywhere in the body, just like in case of iron. Likewise, it activates enzymes like carboxylases and it helps in the synthesis of auxin, that is a phytohormone, and tryptophan, which is an essential amino acid. Okay. Next, copper. Copper is absorbed as Cu2+. It is required everywhere in the body. Now, for the functions, It is required in redox reactions in ETC, just like in case of iron, and it is required for overall growth and metabolism of the plant body. Alright. Next, boron. Boron is taken up in the form of BO3 3- or B4O7 2-. It is required in the leaves and seeds. Now, what would be the function of boron? It is required in uptake and utilization of calcium ion. That means without the help of boron, calcium cannot be absorbed by the plant. So see how again mineral nutrition is interrelated with so many minerals together. If there is a deficiency of boron, that means there will be also deficiency of calcium starting in the plant body. That's how interrelated these things are. Now, it helps in functioning of cell membrane and also in pollen germination. Likewise, very important role for boron is that it will help in translocation of carbohydrate through phloem. So in phloem transport, boron plays a very, very important role. Do remember that. It also helps in cell differentiation and cell elongation. Alright. Next, molybdenum. Molybdenum is absorbed as MoO2 2+. It is required mostly in the roots. It's required in all the part of the plant body, but mostly it will be found in the roots. Now, it is a component of nitrogenase or nitrate reductase, and that would be, these are the enzymes associated with nitrogen metabolism. We'll be discussing it in details in this chapter itself. Next is chlorine. Chlorine is taken up as Cl- and it is required everywhere in the plant body. Its main function is that it would be required in photolysis of water. Just like manganese would be required, chlorine will also be required in splitting of water step during photosynthesis. And likewise, sodium and potassium together would maintain the solute concentration and ionic valence of the cell. Alright. The last would be nickel. Nickel is taken up as Ni2+, and it is required mainly, or it is found mainly in the leaves and the roots. Now, function for nickel would be that it is a component of the enzymes urease and hydrogenase, and it is required for urea metabolism. Alright, so these are certain important, very important roles of the essential elements that all of you must remember. They are very, very important for you to memorize. I hope today's class is clear with you. In the next class, we'll start with deficiency symptoms.